just waited to say that until after we start recording. Okay, so we're just going to go into
what he does in the privacy of his own home is his business.
So today I'm joined on Let's Talk Bitcoin by Stephanie Murphy.
Hello.
Andreas M. Antonopoulos.
Hey there.
And special guest host Anthony Diorio, who's the executive director of the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada, co-founder of CryptoKid, a founder on the Ethereum project, and many, many others. Full disclosure, Anthony is also an individual sponsor of the Let's Talk Bitcoin show. Anthony, thanks for joining us today on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
It's an honor to be on with you guys. Thanks a lot.
You have like a million projects, so we've been trying to get you on to talk about the conference up in Toronto. But again, it's just like we're starting to do these guest host things, and I'm into this idea that we can just make this one long conversation, because those really seem to be the episodes that people like the most. Pick a project. What do you want to talk about first? Because I got questions about all of them.
The most recent thing that we launched was Bitcoin Decentral Accelerate, which is an accelerator program that's run out of Bitcoin Decentral, which is a 5,500 square foot building, 4-foot building in downtown Toronto. It gets, I think, about 100,000 cars passing every day looking at a big orange Bitcoin sign right at the front. We house an ATM in there. It's a co-working facility. It's a space for the Bitcoin Alliance of Canada, which is a nonprofit organization here in Canada that I'm involved with. We do a meetup every week that gets between 50 and 100 people every Wednesday in the space. We've got some offices for Ethereum out of there. We have HR, legal counsel, accounting from Ethereum working out of there. Vitalik's place of business is out of there. It's offices for CryptoKit. We've got the studio for Coin Talk. A bunch of activity going on there, and it's getting busier every day. It's really a lively building, and it's really amazing to have these people all together in a space where ideas are just flowing. So that's the newest thing that we've started in January. We've got the expo that's coming up. And that's going to be at the Metro Toronto Convention Center. And all you guys are coming. I'm really excited to have you up there. It's going to be great. It's going to be a real community event. And it's been a lot of fun.
I am so looking forward to that, Anthony. It's going to be awesome. What have I done? Maybe 15 conferences in the last year and a half with Bitcoin. And I've really learned a lot from them. And I think it needs that balance. It needs that community balance with the business balance. And that's something that I hope that we can perfect.
Bitcoin Decentral, right? So, Anthony, when was the first time we talked? It was on episode maybe 5 or 6, I think, of Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Before Bitcoin, you mean last year?
Yeah, last year. It was a real early episode. And, at that point, your project was the Alliance of Canada. That was the thing that we were talking about at that point. And then, you're working on I can count 7 or 8 different projects here. So what happened over the course of that year that could put you in a position where now you're starting an incubator, and you're just the nexus for all this activity everywhere I look?
So what happened was, with the Alliance, I had sold a Bitcoin business before that when I became executive director of the Alliance. And I had nothing. I had no business interest at all. And I was a full-time volunteer doing this executive director position, working with the other directors. We've got right now over 1,000 members of the Alliance up here in Canada. Then things just started coming at me with different business ventures and different ideas. And the first one was CryptoKid. My partner, Steve, who I'd worked with before, just out of the blue one day said, "Hey, I've been working on a Chrome extension with Bitcoin Wallet." And I'm like, that's exactly what's needed. And I knew that that's what's needed. I've been dreaming about that for a while. I remember at the conference in New York at Inside Bitcoins last year, the Web3 guy saying, that's what's needed. You need to bring it into the browser. And nobody had done it yet. We were the first to do it. And from there, started working on that project. We've now got, the instant messaging. We've got a Bitcoin directory built into there. And then things just kind of snowballed.
Anthony, the question that I wanted to ask you was, when you got started, did you have a bunch of resources, or was this something where you over time from being involved in the community and acting opportunistically, you kind of levered up?
So when I got involved, I was just coming out of selling some properties. That's what I had done previously. I had a landlord. I had student properties, and in Toronto, I felt that it was going to be hit hard very soon. I thought that the prices were way overheated. So I decided to get out fully and just enjoy the 6 years before that of the housing prices going up. And that's when I came across Bitcoin. It was a perfect time. I was looking to see, okay, where am I going to start investing some of this money? And I think that's about the time it was around $11. And that's when I made my first purchase. And I did it as easy as going to the bank and just making a bill payment. And that was my first foray in. And about a month later, I started the meetup group, and it's kind of snowballed from there. And then with the sale of my first business, that was a full Bitcoin sale. And I did pretty well with that, and that's enabled me to continue on doing these type of things and funding them. So it was always been the goal for my first company with my partner to say, hey, let's get involved in something, and then we'll take that money and do something even more meaningful for the community and for different projects to really spread this out. So that's how it came about.
Huh. Last year, the first article that I wrote, the time that you got in actually at $11, that's just about the time that I wrote this, was this article based on a bunch of interviews I did with people who had between a couple hundred and a couple thousand Bitcoin. And the question at that point was, well, Bitcoin's this big Ponzi scheme because all the people who got it early and cheap are just going to sell it later, and then the price will go down because no one will want it. And there was all this sort of talk. But I went and I talked to people who actually were in the situation where, if, Bitcoin succeeded, they would find themselves there. And all of them were talking about starting incubators or launching startups, or that was the one commonality in all of the divergent opinions and things that they wanted to do. And so again, I've been watching your progress for a long time, and it really just feels like, I don't know. I'm probably putting some of my own bias onto you here, but that is what I've kind of looked at you like, is, someone who's taking the opportunities given and levering up, and then using that instead of being like, all right, well, now I'm going to take my cash and do something else. You say, okay, and now I'm going to reinvest it in because it makes more sense to me and it's better, just generally speaking.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's building up the relationships. Ethereum is a good example of this. I've known Vitalik for a long time. He was actually the very first meetup in Toronto that we did. And boy, he's come a long way in the last year and a half. It was approaching him when we started doing CryptoKit, saying to him, hey, we want you to be involved in our project here. We'd like to offer you part of our company to just continue doing what you're doing and help development with my partner. And we got a lot of respect for you. It's the same thing we did with Roger Ver and Eric Voorhees to bring them on board. It was like, I really love what you guys are doing. I look up to you guys a lot, and I'd love for you to be part of this team with us to get this, what we think is a really amazing wallet system out there, and continue to improve it. So it's about building up those types of relationships that always seem to come back afterwards. And that's how I think Vitalik brought me on board with Ethereum. I was one of the initial people with him, and then I brought on, I think it was my connections with Charles Hoskinson and Joseph Lubin, two of the other founders that are involved with us right now. It's about building up those connections and people just, digging what you're doing and giving back to the community, and it all comes together, in the nonprofit side of what I do and the for-profit side I do. And I'm just so passionate about this that I've told you this before, Adam. I'm almost like a 3-month guy before I get involved in Bitcoin. I can do things for 3 months and then I'm out. And this has been a year and a half, 2 years for me. And I'm just more excited every day to be working on this stuff.
So Anthony, the Ethereum project, I think I first read the white paper that Vitalik circulated right before I was getting on a plane to go and talk about DAX in Washington at a retreat that we put on for 5 days. And I read it on the plane and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I agree with you. I think Vitalik is a really, really interesting guy. He's one of the reasons why I actually got into Bitcoin journalism, ironically, because the publication he was initially involved with had a really innovative, we were not going to release the next article until enough people pay us a total of, I think they were going for, half of a Bitcoin back when they were very, very inexpensive, it was small amounts. But the point is that it was a really innovative model that used this thing. So Vitalik, I totally agree with you that, he's really kind of going down this rabbit hole, but it's an ambitious project, and you guys are trying to do things that are hard. And that if you look at other projects in the space, they're not as ambitious. And I think that, do you think that there's a reason there? Do you think that this is like a moonshot type of project, or are you guys really feeling like this is accomplishable?
I'm really confident in it just because I trust Vitalik so much. I've gotten to know him very well. He's a extremely straightforward, reliable, in my opinion, genius. And I've spoken to other people and our other developers working on the project, and they're very confident in what we're doing now. So that gives me a lot of confidence. I've never seen something like this grow so quickly. We've got 50, almost 60 Skype groups going right now with hundreds of people involved. And then we've got 25 meetup groups across the world, including one that just had its first in Tehran, in Iran yesterday, the day before. I've never seen something like this blow up the way it has in such a short time. We started this in January, beginning of January. I got involved in the project at the end of December. Started this really in January, and what we've been able to accomplish, I think, over a few short months, has been spectacular. The community is really coming behind us, and it's this community growth and the excitement that we're seeing, which is leading for people to start up meetup groups just because they're so enthusiastic about it.
Are you talking about meetup groups for Ethereum?
We've got over 25 now meetup groups for Ethereum.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, one popped up in my area recently. It's rather interesting. I'm going to go visit it this week, I hope.
Yeah, so we're calling into them on a regular basis where they're saying, hey, can you come do a Skype call into the group? And they're not just, 4 or 5 people. There's meetings with like 30, 40 people involved in these things. So that's where you can really tell what people are feeling about a project. And it's also the excitement of other guys. I mean, Mastercoin, they're thrilled about what we're doing. We're going to be doing some work hopefully with, collaborations with Open Transactions. They're one of our partners, actually, our strategic partners. And we've got even companies like AVG, the antivirus guys, that are excited and reached out to us and got some ideas for monetization strategies for their virus software program. So it's really touching a lot of different people, and it's really exciting to be involved in this.
So what would go on at a Ethereum meetup?
Well, in general, a representative or somebody who's reached out to us says, hey, I want to start up this meetup. Can you give us some tools? We give them some educational tools. We'll usually have 1 or 2 of the leadership team call in, answer questions from the people in the space there, let them know what's going on with the product sale and when we plan on starting to sell Ether, which of course is the currency of Ethereum. So it's information that they want to understand better, how the project came about, what obstacles we're facing, if we need people to get involved. We're an open source project on one side of things, so there's lots of opportunities for people to start helping and assisting us. And it's unique. It's an extremely unique situation, and it's being run by, I think, a really well organized team. And we're just moving really quickly in a couple months to be able to have this team that we put together, not have an issue with developers. Like, we've got a plethora of developers helping us out, which seems to be the common problem in the space right now, especially with the next level of cryptocurrencies. People are just struggling to get developers on board. We just don't have that issue where people are just flocking to it and helping us out. And most of them are volunteers.
So now, you have not sold any Ether yet. That is something that was originally scheduled for the end of January and has moved a couple of times. Can you share kind of some of the genesis of that process?
Plan initially was to launch in Miami, was to, at the time it was going to be called a fundraiser. And we had to take a step back because there was too much money that we were being told was going to come into the project. And we had to ensure that we had done things properly in terms of security regulations. Like, we just had to take a step back, decide which country we were going to go to actually to be a jurisdiction for Ethereum. We eventually decided to go with Switzerland. We were immensely helped by the Open Transaction guys who had already set themselves up there. A lot of good connection. And it looks like right now we're going to be stamped as a currency by the Swiss government, and also to be able to be sold as a piece of software. We're going to not have the tax implications that we initially thought we might be having. It's really forming to be a perfect situation for us. We're setting up there. We've got the hub in Toronto, the hub in Switzerland, and we got a bunch of others that seem to be forming right now. We're setting one up probably in San Francisco and New York, and we're calling them holons. That's the name for our hubs. And I think a holon is like a part of the whole and the whole itself. I think that's a term. I wasn't familiar with it before, but that's what we're calling our hubs in different cities. So we decided to take a step back, regroup, make sure that we were doing things properly, and also come up with plans and strategies for where the money is going to be put forth. And it really was the wisest decision we ever made. And we're just taking our time right now. We're probably a couple of weeks away. There will be lots of announcement before we start selling Ether. But we really were able to slow down, and I'm glad that we did.
So, Anthony, tell me more about this Switzerland thing. I mean, what are the specific advantages of being a company based in Switzerland? Are you saying you're going to actually be a company that is based out of Switzerland for the initial crowdfunding with Ethereum? How did you go about that? And do you think Switzerland is going to become like a mecca for Bitcoin businesses now?
I think what we have is a great opportunity to lead the way there and actually work with the Swiss government. A lot of interaction in Switzerland is directly with the government, and that's what we've been able to do. And I think we're going to be we're going to be almost to write certain things because they're using us as a test model. And it's gone amazingly with what they've been able to do for us over there, and the connections with the lawyers and connections with the OT guys have been able to open the doors for us and really expedite things. If we were to try to do this in some other place, this would have taken months or even maybe a year to get all this done. Our main entity is in Switzerland. We've got some designers out there. We've got some employees out there. Charles Hoskinson has been there for the last many weeks getting things set up. He's also with Mihai, two of our founders. So there are two of our founders there. We've got 8 founders in total. 2 of them was operating out of Toronto. We got one from Jamaica. got one from Israel. So that's going to be our main setup there. And we have to actually keep infrastructure there as it's not like we're just setting up a shell company. That's actually part of it. And that's going to be our main focus there. And then I've got accounting and I've got legal going on out of Toronto, HR's out of there. We've got video production. We've got some of the security guys.
It sounds like, with something like Ethereum, obviously the ultimate goal is to be a DAC, right? Is to be decentralized and not have a centralized company that is issuing software or anything like that. But now we're kind of in this awkward in-between phase where we're trying to get to that from where we are now. So what is the plan as far as evolving toward being a completely decentralized organization?
Yeah, so it is definitely our plan, I think, within 1 or 2 years to take it to that route. That's definitely where we want to go. A large part of what we're doing is going to be going into a nonprofit. We're going to wait to see how much actually comes in before we make that percentage decision as what's going to be going into a nonprofit and what would be going into the for-profit entity. Our plan and what we'd like to do is to say as much as possible that we can put into the nonprofit. And that's going to mean working with universities. We've got 2 of the top cryptography people from the University of Waterloo that have joined us and be working with us. So we want to set up, educational programs. We want to set up, I think that needs some type of structure, and that's where the nonprofit's going to come into play. The for-profit stuff is going to go towards building the apps that are going to be done on top of Ethereum. It's going to go towards funding the accelerator space in Toronto that we're doing. We'll try to set one up in New York as well. And it really was something that we had to do in that sense, was we had to also have a portion of it as a for-profit. And I think and I don't know the details too much, but because of the setup that we have in Switzerland, that's what we have to do. So it's going to be our challenge to balance the nonprofit and the for-profit, to separate them. But our goal is to have as much going towards the nonprofit and really build up our infrastructure and build up the very low end parts of Ethereum, which is like the reference client and things like that. And then separate that between the higher level stuff, which are the applications and the more higher level activities that we'll be doing.
Are you concerned that working with a university could slow things down at all?
Yes, that's a concern of mine. I think having certain people like Neil Kloblitz working for us and some of the people that Vitalik's worked with, it is something that I definitely think about it. If it might be a little bit more like we're traveling in mud doing that, but I think it'll have to be monitored, and we're actually going to be the ones that are going to be, on top of that. So you might be right. It might be an issue in that. I guess we'll just have to see what comes out of it. And it's not going to be all our eggs in one basket going to the university. So
I want to know more about Switzerland too. Like, what are the specific legal, tax, whatever advantages of being in Switzerland for a Bitcoin business? Not that that exactly describes Ethereum, but why Switzerland?
You know what? I wasn't involved too much in the decision making. That I haven't been to Switzerland to figure that out. It's Charles Hoskinson that's organizing things out there. So all I know is it's worked out perfectly in that we don't have any tax events that are going to happen on the sale. Yet we can still sell ourselves like we're selling software, and that takes us out of the whole issues of having to deal with SEC or having to deal with securities or having to do IPOs or any type of prospectus, things like that. And that's why the decision.
Is it fair to say that you had lots and lots of options and picked the one that you felt like, and apparently have gotten the best deal for what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I'd say that. We searched it, and that seemed to be the best place. And then with the connections and the people that we had who had gone through that before, it was a perfect fit.
So there's an area of the Ethereum project that I've been highly critical of, and it's that the founders have a special rule set that was designed for them and that only apply to them and not to anybody else. And I know that I've brought this up in the past, and I know you guys have kind of changed it a couple of times. And so do you have any thoughts on that? Can you share the genesis of why it makes sense for an Ethereum founder to get like a special rule set just for them when other people starting other types of currencies aren't doing that sort of thing?
The rule set is that it's not just the founders, it's actually the whole team of people that have been working on this since December that are going to be getting a certain percentage, and it's still getting worked out. What we've seen from the community though is, and we think we have a good pulse on the community, is that it doesn't seem to be the things that people are concerned about. And I think we're doing it in a way that will be very small. We're doing it in a way that we think people have to get rewarded. We're taking on positions here. We're taking on risks here. We're not creating something and then leaving this project. And it's going to be something that we're going to be guiding it through for the next year to 2 years. I've had to now take a focus away from some of the things that I'm working on to be working on this more full time. And that it's being split between 50, 60 people that have been working on the project and haven't had any payment as of yet. We're completely self-funded and bootstrapped at the point right now. And hasn't been cheap doing all this stuff with all the setups in Switzerland and in Canada here. So I think we're being fair with what we're doing. We still haven't officially decided exactly what percentages that will be done. But you know what? I think it's fair. I think the team thinks it's fair. And it seems like from the voice of the community that they're more excited about what we're trying to accomplish here than thinking about that.
Yeah, I have a lot less problem with it now compared to when we were talking about a launch at the end of January when there hadn't been a lot of work done to that point. It was mostly a paper still.
Yeah.
I think there's a valid argument to be made. The bottom line is this is open source software. So, if you really like the idea and the concept and the source code and the work that's being done, but you don't like the team's approach to fundraising, you could always clone and create Ethereum, build an alternative team around Ethereum, which is silver contract to Ethereum's gold contract. And then you could try and create an alt contract and see if you can compete in the market. And if people think that's a better way to IPO it, they'll reward that. And if people think that the original team that has, people like Vitalik in it is better suited to solve this problem and continue to maintain it, they'll back that. I understand some people's concern, but at the same time, I've heard so much hyperbole around this that just because, you're using the coin to fundraise for the team that's developing the coin, somehow that's a scam. And I think that's ridiculous because, I've used the source code. I can go in there and create a clone of Ethereum in about 10 seconds. There's already like 3 implementations of it in 3 different languages and launch my own. So if anybody thinks they can do it better, they have that opportunity. It's not a closed source system. You have a choice here.
That impacts substantially, though, people who have invested in it. And there are 2 actually arguments to be made here. The first is it a competitive disadvantage to have special rules for certain groups? And again, like I said, when I was, having more of a problem with this, it was going to be 5 people and they were people who, again, like I like all you guys. It's not about that I don't want you to get paid. It's just that in a world that is open source and the only competition that can beat you is the competition that takes your finished product, forks it, and then gives it away for 1/10 of the price of what you've done, it seems like that would matter to people who are buying Ether as a product.
I think what we got to focus on here is the team that we've got behind it, as well as the strategic partnerships that we're building. I honestly am not concerned about someone else being able to bring together this type of community and this type of team that we've been able to do. And we've been able to attract a lot of developers, a lot of people who are realizing that they're going to be rewarded for what they're doing.
You guys have done a fantastic job. I really don't mean to diminish that at all. As far as the projects that are out there, as far as community building, investing stakeholders, and you guys there's not even a token yet. And the community, for sure. I mean, Ethereum is a project that has a ton of buzz and a ton of very good thoughts about it in the community, contrasting with a lot of the other projects.
It's a balance, Adam, and it's been a balance that we've been working with the community and changing. And I think we're people that we're going to feel confident going in, and you're not going to appease everybody. I've always used, whatever I've done in the Bitcoin space, as a 90%. I try to do everything, whether it be what I did with the Alliance, what I do is I want 90% plus to approve. If you can't get that type of approval, you're going to be fighting uphill. And I think we've got that. And I think we've got the encouragement from the community. So you're going to get people that are on board, but we'll do the best we can to be fair. And I think that's what we're going to do.
Okay. So I'm going to continue to press you on this, Anthony, just on a slightly different angle. The other argument against doing something like this is that you essentially, again, it depends on how large this is. So I could be, completely out of line here. But the other concern is that you create a situation where the people who are working on the project have a situation where, win or lose, with the project, they're good because they got all this money up front that they could use as money during this exciting period. I think that's anyways, I'm sorry. I am a squeaky wheel. That is the definition of what I am. And I really do try to bring that to every project that I involve myself with because I complain about a lot of these things before other people do. But
I appreciate you doing that. And it's you doing that's going to make us be better and make us, if we can appeal to someone like yourself, and we've already said you already feel a lot better on the way things have gone over the last few months, then that's great. I encourage that. And I think the whole team encourages talks like this.
Adam, I was wondering, like, is your issue with the different set of rules for certain people, or is it with the idea that certain people are getting paid? Because it sounds like you're saying your issue is with the fact that it's built into the code that there are different rules for some individuals.
Yes. At the core of my issue here, it's that I feel like anytime you set up special rule systems for whoever and whatever the intention is, it just muddies the water. It just makes it so that now it's not a simple situation. But I'm doing the same thing with LTB coin. With LTB coin, we're figuring out how we're going to vest people initially in it, and that's probably going to look a lot like what Ethereum is doing here. So I have all these same problems and I have all these same concerns because ultimately, Anthony, you're one of 8 founders, and the team that's going to be getting the distribution is like 50, but there are a lot of you making this decision. Whereas with our project, a lot of these kind of core decisions, like I'm trying to outsource as much as possible, but I have to make a lot of these decisions myself. So I'm very conscious of the optics issues and really trying to figure out what the best path forward is, because everybody's trying something different and I can't figure out which one's right. You guys have been really successful at building investing stakes, and I think the Holland idea is fantastic. I mean, like, again, just the fact that you guys are showing up on conference calls and like doing the outreach stuff is more than, nobody else is doing that. That is the most important thing here. So again, like, I just feel like it would be such a shoo-in if it wasn't for this one level of added complexity that makes it so I have to worry about that part. But again, like I said, I'm a squeaky wheel.
I understand where you're coming from, and it had a lot of debates and a lot of discussions. When you got 8 people on the leadership team, you're going to have both sides of it, and we're at a comfortable point. Actually, I think the most comfortable we've ever been as the 8, because you have some people on one side of the far extreme and other people on the other. We've been able to come in the middle to the point where everybody seems to be happy. So I think we're pretty comfortable.
This is Chris Joseph bringing you news on Next, the first true second-generation cryptocurrency for March 25th, 2014. If you've been into the Bitcoin Talk forums lately, you may have noticed that the Next thread is now more than 2,500 pages long. The Next community uses this thread to discuss everything from Next core features to philosophy to the true identity of BC Next. It's a thriving discussion, but it's a little hard to follow if you're only interested in one topic. New forums dedicated to Next have been set up at nextforum.org. It looks and feels a little bit like the Bitcoin Talk forum. That's intentional, but there are now separate topics there for Next features, applications, marketing, tech support, and more. Check it all out at nextforum.org. For more general information on Next, head to nextcrypto.org or mynxt.org. And stay tuned for more news on Next on the next Let's Talk Bitcoin broadcast.